we had to produce 58 pieces of content in a 2-week turnaround.
I was thrown into the deep end on this one, I'm not going to lie.
Sure, it's about glassware, but, you know, it doesn't mean it can't be something more. So in February 2022, we were approached by Meeples and Dragons, John and Sarah, to produce for them a whole pile of social media content for Meeples and Dragons' new glassware line. Turns out it's for D&D products, which I love. They asked us what it would take to get some fantastic photography for their new line of steins and whiskey glasses, and then we discussed what would be the best way to actually get that product in front of people, and it kind of grew from there.
Hi, I'm John.
And I'm Saz from Meeples and Dragons. We sell some creator-made stuff, dice out the wazoo, pins out the wazoo, and of course, the glasses.
We've actually got 14 different designs across 3 different glasses. The 2 new glasses are the whiskies and the steins, and we do all the D&D classes, the main classes, including the artificer.
We had 14 glasses and then had to have 14 cast members that represented each one of those. We didn't really know going in how difficult the casting process would be. We reached out to a number of people that have a great reputation in the local live-action roleplay community. We ended up getting inundated with applications. We had to make some really tough decisions, and then we reached out, and thankfully everybody was on board.
All right, so this was a really interesting project because I was thrown into the deep end on this one, I'm not going to lie. Matt's just like, hey, I've got this fantasy project I want to do. I'm like, that sounds fantastic. That could be really cool. Yeah, we need like 58 pieces of content. And I'm just like, fantastic. How are we going about this? How long do we have? 3 days. Oh, fantastic. How long do we have to deliver it? Maybe like a week after we shoot it. So it was an intense project, and the amount of setups we had to do was obviously very intimidating. So when I was first informed by Matt, I was like, cool, I'm happy to do that, but I think I need you to take on the majority of the producing logistics and make sure everything's arranged, and I'll rock up and make sure it all works.
Logistically, this project was something it was a bit of a nightmare. When you're dealing with the East Coast from the West Coast of Australia, it's a little bit difficult for some people to grasp just how vast that distance is. Even just trying to get the product sent over was a logistics issue. Once they arrived, we started actually making big strides into organising location. The most important component to this production was really making it feel like a tavern in a fantasy setting. The Last Drop Elizabethan was an amazing location. It's a Tudor-style pub. The interior is so cozy and welcoming. It feels like walking into a fantasy location. That's where Veronica, who plays the Ranger in the series of videos, was invaluable. Veronica was very happy to let us take props that she uses for LARP. We were looking for the internals of a clock that we needed for the artificer at one point, and she's just like, yeah, I've got a box of them. And don't discount just having bits of food on set that you use as physical props. Find something that looks a little bit unusual, like a dragon fruit or something, it's going to look like it's a normal staple of a fantasy diet.
I went into pre-production solely as a director of photography, which is a little bit different to how Matt and I usually work, because sometimes I direct, sometimes I produce. We all kind of seem to cross-pollinate the actual skill sets we do. But for production on this one, I had to be certain that I was only going in as the DP, otherwise it would have just been completely overwhelming with the amount of setups we had to do. We had to be quite disciplined with the coverage that we got for this shoot, so I kind of tried to keep a rule of like not trying to exceed 3 setups. So that was kind of like the main skid as a wide, a close-up of whoever needs it, and a product shot. Knowing that we needed to be disciplined with the amount of shots and coverage that we got caused us to be creative with what was happening in front of the singular frame. Good
Boy Media is a fairly trim and sleek company. We tend to work with a tight crew, but we also understand that when we've got larger projects, we need to scale out. We knew that makeup would be a massive component to this because not only are we dealing with the fact that we need them to read on screen, but we needed to make sure that their LARP costuming would also read on screen. So things like face paint, certain face paint doesn't look great on camera. So we brought in Andrea Lim and Jacinta Green, with Jacinta Green taking the lead as makeup artist in charge. They were phenomenal. They managed to get the team in and out in tandem in the time that we needed. The setups that we had for the shoot were very rapid turnaround. We were looking at like one setup every half hour. So to have someone who was just constantly making sure that costume and makeup were looking on point was really useful. Additionally, we needed someone to run the set, so we got Josh Walker in to make sure that everything was running to time. It was really handy to have someone who could just kind of rein the chaos in. Yeah. Obviously, we work with Tom Moore, who is our sound recordist and designer.
We weren't rolling sound on set, so I don't know why I'm being interviewed.
Tom is handsome. So just having him on set basically to just eye candy, that's all I really want from him. And he did more than that, so that was great, but he nailed the first brief perfectly.
I was in charge of props, I was in charge of continuity, I was the assistant camera, assistant director, and the runner. My main job was to keep track of all the glasses, make sure we knew where everyone's different glass was so we could get it on set as quickly as possible, to keep up with the tight schedule, and also to track what different liquid was going in for each different class, to try and match it up to the themes that we were trying to tell, but also make sure that we had enough to then fill up everyone's glass for group shots and when they were involved in other people's shots. Then the most fun stuff that I got to do was anything with practical effects. So tying up the leaves for the druid shot and using my boom operator skills to make a magic wand float in a glass.
This project was shot on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. The only challenge with this camera is it was a new camera system, which meant, all right, let's do this really difficult project with a really quick turnaround on all new gear. So it was definitely an adventure, but I have to say, the images that came out of the Blackmagic, I was incredibly impressed with. We used a lot of the Aperture brand lighting, so we had a couple of the P60Cs, which are the RGB colour panels. They were fantastic because they just gave us a little bit of an option to throw a splash of colour up where we needed it. And not that you want to overdo that, but sometimes because we're in a fantasy world, it made a lot of sense, especially for like casting spells. By casting a little bit of colour or a bit of a pulse onto the actor's face, as soon as you layered an asset or a special effect over the top, it blended into the world a lot smoother. The main lighting challenges we had in the location, there was actually a big open space, so we could kind of put lights everywhere, but there was a big open window that was like 2 stories up. So we had to go down to Bunnings and buy a whole heap of like black cardboard mesh material that we used to block out all the windows. We had to get up on a ladder, we had to tape things up, and the first day actually took a lot longer than we thought, and most of that was trying to solve that problem.
My main job was actually fairly easy because the cast had such an amazing array of props with them, and if they didn't, they were working together to build them.
The wizard was making a wand on set from some wood that they'd found, just whittling and then burning to make sure it looked aged. So to have like 14 set dress / costume / prop makers working with you creatively was amazing. The biggest challenge, I think, was the fact that we had to produce 58 pieces of content in what was effectively a 2-week turnaround, which is very quick. We had to hurry up and make sure that the production was done by PAX 2022. So we picked the non-linear editor that's right for the job. Sometimes that's Premiere Pro, sometimes that's Avid, but in this case we used DaVinci. DaVinci is a phenomenally powerful tool. It's got some of the best color grading software in the industry.
There's something about DaVinci's color grading system that is just superior to everything else I've worked with. It's just all the nuances just go so far. Matt and I had to then figure out how to work together because there was so much content that we had to divide and conquer what we were doing. Knowing that we had a file system structure that was similar, so Matt could just send me across something and I could get on with it, that made it a lot easier and I could just send him the special effects.
We got the revisions to Sarah and Jean as quickly as we could, and they pretty much loved everything that we did. There were very few notes, and that was great as well because it meant that we could hit the ground running with the rest of the post process.
So one of the things that was really tricky for me was getting the tentacles coming out of the warlock shot because it's such a small confined area that it's very easy to look fake. What really helped was I had one tentacle coming out and that was a little bit much, I'm not gonna lie. So by having a whole heap of tentacles coming out in a small space, it just gave it this really creepy, eerie effect.
It was great that we managed to capture exactly what they were after and also make sure that we cut it in a way that was exactly what they saw as their vision. If we weren't in sync with that, I don't think we would have been able to finish the production in the time frame that we did. But thankfully, we got it and they got it and everyone was happy.
It's our first PAX.
Yeah, it's our
so
first
exciting.
This PAX, we've made it, I guess we've made it all about our new glass range launch. We got all of them at all of the promotional videos here at PAX.
It was absolutely awesome to be at PAX for 2022. PAX is the biggest nerd convention in Australia, officially the Penny Arcade Expo, but it has grown far beyond that. It involved video games, board games, tabletop games, and to have our work shown there as Good Boy Media and to work with Meeples and Dragons for that was just a joy to see.
I love the druid one where she's making her own drink in the stein. And
Yeah.
I also love the warlock with the creepy tentacles.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
The one I quite enjoy, just because I'm a bit macabre, is the goldfish in the whiskey glass with the druid.
Yeah.
And I really dig in the fighter ones. I really am.
They're really good too. And that's partly because of the actor that was involved in that, because he was...
He looked like he's going to jump up
Yeah,
from
he
the
does.
table and
And
take
stab
out his own
someone.
party members.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is seeing Matt on set, that made me very happy because I just knew he was working on stuff that he loves in a field that he loves. It was really cool to see that, and you could just tell he was having the best time.
So this is like watching something that I've wanted to do forever come to life.
And it felt really bad sometimes just being like, hey mate, we need to move to the next shot, when I could just tell he was just having an absolute blast.
I'm really proud of the work that the team did. It was a really challenging project on a number of factors. Budget was very ambitious for what we ended up actually producing. The locations just sort of fell in place. We got to work with some amazing, talented people. It was just a great shoot to be able to work on set with everybody. And I loved the fact that I was able to make a fantasy production.
I really did enjoy working with Good Boy. It was an incredible process to go through, and yeah, they were really good at communicating everything that was going on, so we understood. I loved it.
And they operated professionally, which is great because that's where what our background is. And they just got the project, they got the material, and any changes that we wanted to make, they fully understood.